Your organization is deciding, mostly by accident, how much of its thinking to outsource. I've spent the last 30 years on the other side of that line and can report to you what it looks like from over there. Are you using Otter, Fireflies, Fathom, Granola, or the built-in AI summaries that Zoom offers, or anything like those? Aren't they incredibly convenient? Aren't they awesome? Aren't you glad to have that burden taken off your hands? Well, more often than not, we're not checking those summaries against the originals, and those become your organization's long-term memory. Not the original conversation, but the notes of it. And I don't know about you, but I remember somebody a long time ago telling me that whoever takes notes in a meeting, the minute taker, has a really important role, because how what was said gets expressed and recorded matters a lot and can guide future conversations. Right now, you're turning those things over to the AIs. If you've been disciplined about using AI, you likely have AI critique your first draft. And after a while, for pressure from above to do things more quickly, you're probably turning over first draft creation to the AIs. And after a while, you keep reading what their output, and it's pretty good. In fact, over time, for a lot of people, that first AI draft ships. It becomes your final document. Now, writing is not easy. I find writing kind of torturous, even though apparently what I write comes out pretty well. But what we're missing in this process is the grinding and crunching noises in our heads that are how we thought about the issue. And if we're collaborating with somebody else, the contention of ideas and that discussion that leads to insights in our brains. This is beginning to go by the wayside as we turn over the writing of our points of view to AI. Too many years ago to say the actual date, I worked at a little company called New Science Associates. We had a retainer market research around technology stuff. I was their neural networks analyst. When we had one or two of these retainer services, every 2 weeks we would publish a newsletter, and when the newsletter came back from the printer, we would have a stuffing party, and everybody would drop everything they were doing. We would show up in the conference room where all of the paper issues, all stapled up, were sitting and waiting with envelopes and labels. And all of us in the company, everybody from sales, Joan, Anita, Ian, Justin, from researchers like me, Bill, John Pop, everybody else would come together, and we would take the labels, put them on the envelopes, stuff the issue into the envelopes, and get them ready for somebody to wheel across the street to the post office. These stuffing parties were grunt work, but they were really fun. We'd order some pizzas and have some drinks. And we got to see the labels and hear the stories about our clients. So you got to know the client base. And as I was in research, and I got to see, oh yeah, I just answered an inquiry for this person here. That was key. That's just one kind of grunt work. But the first drafts, the simple tasks, all those things that were the way that junior employees learned the business, those are going away because they're being eaten by AI. We're sawing off the bottom of the ladder. And in 10 years, when we need experienced people who understand the business with some depth, there's a good chance we're going to miss a lot of that experience because there was no place, there was no rung for young people to sort of grab on and start to understand what was happening. A common critique of AI these days is that it's just a stochastic parrot. It's just an averaging of knowledge. And I disagree with those. I think they're way too simplistic ways of thinking about the great power that lies in there. But they are kind of averaging what's happening. They're getting a sense of everything. They can tell what a maple leaf looks like because they understand what average mapleness looks like, and they can distinguish it from average oakness, for example. Now, as we start shipping things written with AI, we can be more critical and we can ask the AIs to take different points of view, but that's kind of advanced use. So in many cases, what's happening is something that's averaged and then kind of unsigned shows up shipping. Back in the day when I wrote for New Science and after that for Esther Dyson, my name was on everything I wrote. Everything had provenance. Everything had a label that you could go and ask the person who created it, hey, what did you mean? And I disagree with this, and you could have a really interesting conversation. We seem to be losing some of that now to AI. As Beth Kanter pointed out in her comment on my previous post, the theory behind us handing over our thinking to AIs is called cognitive offloading versus cognitive surrender. The offloading is the positive scenario. It's where we hand over tasks mindfully, thoughtfully, that AIs do really, really well, supervise the results, and stay in the middle of the activity. Cognitive surrender is in fact just surrendering to these new magical capabilities and turning over a lot of the work to them without necessarily staying in there. And it's sort of the road to humans being put out to pasture by AIs. Now, cognitive surrender doesn't look that different from cognitive offloading. It's subtle sometimes. It's not like you're in a scene out of Pulp Fiction where you're pointing a gun at somebody. It's not that dramatic. So we have to be really thoughtful about how we hand things to AIs and what our mutual roles end up being. In the 4 scenarios I just painted, notice that none of them involve somebody actually doing something wrong. These are all matters of convenience that slip in over time. That's what makes this hard and makes it a frontier rather than a scandal. The question isn't who screwed up. The question is, what are you going to do now that you see these forces? I've spent almost 30 years on the offloading side of this line. I've been curating this mind map, taking ideas from my head and putting them in a place where other people can bump into them for all this time, where each link, each decision I made, adding things, curating this mind map, is mine and mine alone so far. From over here, this boundary doesn't look scary. It looks like the most interesting place in the world to stand. In the next post, I'll take you across and show you around. Which of these scenarios have you already spotted in your organization? Or which are running around that you haven't noticed? What other ones have you seen? Post in the comments. I read them all.